Today's episode is brought to you by Daura, the platform for digital shares. And thanks to digital shares, private placements and equity crowdfundings become easy, fast, and cheap to carry out. Daura offers free access for investors and a simple digital subscription process. You can promote investments worldwide through their digital channels, and customers and partners can be turned into shareholders and brand ambassadors. If you want to learn more, go to daura.ch. That's daura.ch.
In the past, you released with a record label and you were with them a longer time, but this now changed. So you eventually have a song with Dutch EDM label. You are doing maybe some production for Sony Music. Then you have an own catalog, and this also, this always results in multiple pay sources.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Vincenzo, a warm welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
You're the co-founder and CEO at Helga, a reconciliation and consolidation of revenue platform for the music industry. So before we talk about your company and what you exactly do, I want to start with your personal background. Music is the big red line in your personal CV. So what does music mean to you?
Well, music has a certain touch of not only creativity, but also interpretation of many things. And depending on what kind of music I listen to, I sort of hear out different things. It could be electronic dance music where it's only instrumentals, but you really hear the artist behind it with the certain melodies. Or if you listen to a song that's written with the lyrics, you have some background or experiences, like most prominently Lady Gaga's Paper Gangster. So music is very interesting in its facets and backgrounds that go into a certain track. So this is why it's very fascinating.
And what instruments do you play yourself?
I learned to play guitar. I think this is my main instrument, from classic to electronic then. So this was, was actually my main instrument.
And today you play the startup game, basically.
Yeah, correct.
Back in 2008, and you and your friends basically created a booking agent for international performing artists here in Switzerland. Where did this entrepreneurial drive come from? Was that always the goal for you to have your own company one day?
Actually, well, it wasn't really the aim to have the own company, but it was more about being able to actually do something which is interesting to me. In that case, I did an internship before with a Swiss company, and it was sort of limited to Swiss artists, which was very cool. I mean, they were amazing. Mm-hmm. But I was more interested in international artists. So with the agency, it allowed me actually to access that roster of mostly old school hip hop.
Nice.
To then book them in Switzerland. So this was like a first experience.
So it was more out of necessity that you joined the entrepreneurial path then?
Yeah. This was really a necessity. There are just a few companies that really work internationally, and so I had to follow this route of doing it by myself.
Did you have any entrepreneurs in your family that also inspired you to start your own company, or anyone else that motivated or pushed you to become an entrepreneur yourself?
No, actually not. The family was pretty much against pursuing that all the time, which I think is reasonable. As it's music, and then also self-employed, and and there were obstacles going on at that time, so obviously it was justified worries. But in the past I learned that my mother had like some stores in the past for washing machines, but maybe if I would have known that before, I would have inherited some entrepreneurial spirit, but not really in that way.
From a family perspective, it was basically startups or your own company, self-employed, and music industry, basically two high risk factors at the same time. Yeah. Don't do that, you might not survive, right? How do you deal with that? Because it's quite difficult for some people to swim against the tide of the family, suggestions and do it anyways.
What I did is sort of stakeholder management, if you want to say so. So it was really about informing them what's going on, and we weren't performing very well there. So also telling them that it's not going well at this point. So by keeping them in the loop, I was actually able to ensure their support throughout the journey. Yeah.
So I like that stakeholder management with the family. I never heard that before. Then, you had your own company, Neidhardt & Company, where you did the artist management. Then only after that, you decided to go to university and get a bachelor's degree in business administration. Why did you decide to do that afterwards? I mean, you were running your own company. Mm-hmm. Did you still feel that this was a necessary step to get that degree?
Yes, because I heard in a radio show of SRF 3 here in Switzerland a guy talking about studying on the side, and so it somehow was interesting. And then I'm from St. Gallen, so you obviously touch with HSG if you want or not, and so with the Start Summit there that I visited and looking at all the things that are happening at universities, etc., I felt like, okay, this is actually interesting. And even though I'm founding something or setting up something, I still want to participate in that and maybe, grow the network or actually learn things. Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be right with the bachelor's at HWZ here in Zurich, as I actually spotted what will later become Helga in that way. So it was actually worth it on the side.
Wow, I want to hear more about that story in a second, but like looking back, this is a very interesting decision to take, right? Because many people say, oh, I don't know what I want to do in the future, so I go and study maybe a bit longer, or they take that as a first step to their education, and then they start their companies. But you already had your company and then decided to go back. How do you manage that from a time perspective? I can imagine that was also quite a distraction or additional heavy workload on top of your operating business.
Yeah, well, the benefit of HWZ is that you study in the evening and on Saturdays. So you technically have a full week where you can work full time, which is great. Still good quality in studying. So this was fine. But in terms of for example, right now I'm at the uni, so I still see the difference in how many hours would need to be invested for studying, etc. Mm-hmm. So the management is really everything after 5. Is really dedicated to the uni, also on weekends. So if you do that on the side, you have to be willing to also go to the library, for example, on Sunday to spend the full day to study, but which most of the students do, right? So in a way, it's very natural. But you obviously can't deny that there are performance issues in the uni. So it's likely you get lower grades, etc. So if you want to be like a high performer at uni and have a very nice 6+ or whatever, which is not even possible, but it's like not going to be like that unless you're very, very talented, which I'm not in that way.
It sounds like a good balance that you need to find there to make both things work at the same time, and also like very long and intense days.
Yeah. Especially if you have like traditional uni stuff, is like group works, etc. You have to really make sure that your group is also sort of efficient. Otherwise, it turns out to be a problem for yourself because you don't have that many resources available in terms of the time, because you still need to study, work, etc.
Right. Yeah. Then in 2021, you founded Helga, and you mentioned before you discovered the business idea and started this initial spark while you were at uni. Please tell us how Helga started.
So I was managing around 5 artists by the time, and was at HWZ at the bachelor. And they just introduced their new major digital business and AI management. So I got presented that data, in school, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this looks very familiar to to what I'm dealing with every day, right? So I felt like, okay, couldn't it be possible for us to actually approach that data, which is mostly revenue data that we looked at by the time, reports with thousands of millions of data lines actually. So I wanted to approach it differently, but the idea really came out of just the presentation of there's actually a thing called AI management or machine learning, etc. That's actually dealing with such a thing. So that was really the initial input. Yeah.
So you saw the potential, you saw the data. What did you do then? Because that's still a big step, right? From seeing the potential, the data, to then build a company. What happened after you realized that there might be something there?
Well, by the time I was still looking at the data using Excel, I had like rough sketches of what I want to change. And then I talked with some developers here in Zurich. They told me, well, it will cost you 50,000 Swiss francs. And then I said, okay, thank you. and it's interesting. I'll hit you up when I'm able to afford that. And then I just looked at finding a developer. And I called up. I actually exchanged with a bunch of people. And but there was like this one lead, which will later become our CTO. Where I actually told him about the idea, and then we started, just talking about how it should be managed, etc. Not really the full-fledged idea of Helga, as this developed later in the journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you met your co-founder Fedor then, because that's one of the biggest challenges for most companies, right? You have an idea, but there's a missing puzzle piece. In your case, the CTO to code the platform. How did you meet and also then agree to actually start working together?
So we met as in my earlier journeys. I still had to earn some additional dollars or Swiss francs. I'm sorry, so I worked for a company just part time as a data entry agent, and later I was with them for 4 years part-time, but later moved around the company to then HR, etc. And so this guy was actually sitting behind me and was one of their developers. And this is how we met. He was actually sitting behind me and in that company. So this was the way we got introduced, by just collaborating. Yeah.
Great. So you have some history together. That certainly helps. How did you then... Maybe testing is the wrong word, but how did you then convince each other that you would be a good team and actually great team to work together? Because working together in one company in separate departments is one thing, right? But then starting a company together, that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, I think because of the way we were seated in that company, because there was he was behind me, then there was my spot where I had to work. And then HR, and then right after was already the CEO. So we had a very direct, we were under very direct fire, if you want to say so, from a patron-ish, founder and CEO. Yeah. So I think, given we already had that sort of level of stress in working there, it was good stress, but still, very challenging. So I think this really, it was not really thinking about, is that the right fit? It just felt very natural. Mm-hmm. And if you think about investors, relations, etc., it's similar firing of challenging the ideas, and so it was just very natural. Yeah.
And then how did you progress from there? At one point, you then said, "Hey, now we really do this." Did you validate the idea in any way, or when did you make that decision to say there's not only potential, it's actually worth investing our time and probably also some money into the company to get started?
Yeah, so Fedor went into a experimenting phase while still working for information technology company in near St. Gallen. So So basically, it was a bunch of months were really just conceptualizing what we want to do. Then once I had the rough concept ready, I first validated it with Startfeld, the innovation network in St. Gallen, and this was very interesting to begin with. The first approach was just like I had the idea, and then you had those people there which were very experienced with hearing ideas. Mm-hmm. So this was the first check if that's actually making sense in a way of startup world approach, because I knew them before, and they always said like management, it's not scalable, etc., which is clear, but in that way, I wanted to approach them very early. But actually before that, we had the support from a Zurich CFO boutique, FS Partners, which gently just lent us some help in actually refining the very rough idea with actually equipping it with some revenue model based on still the original idea, but just verifying that could actually work. And so we had the initial work with those guys from Zurich, then the Startfeld sort of verification, which later, before we actually founded the company, we were already granted a support package from them.
Nice.
So we then founded the company and started showing around mock-ups and talking about the idea with some industry peers, with some managers, some self-managed artists, which is our core customer group, just to see if they think, that could actually help them. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of, soft verified by the time. And then obviously, with 4 pitches more with Startfeld and more verification, we sort of had defined what we now have as a product and value proposition. So, but that took approximately 1.5 years, I would say, until we really figured out what we want to do.
But I mean, that's very normal, I would assume. This sounds like you got just the right amount of support for the early stage. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate? Like, are you happy with the support that you get, or was there something missing from your perspective?
Well, we didn't receive any funding. So, but by the end of it, it's, I'm happy with what we got there, as we didn't have to pay anything in a way. So it was really generous support and very committed. In that phase, and typically it's the funding which is missing,
right?
But we managed, as there was Neidhardt and Company running, I was actually able to also transport some funds into it, very little initial funding, and but we also had our operations very, very low, so we didn't burn. Initially we didn't burn 2,000 a month, we were just
very lean.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So steadily increasing then.
Great. Let's also talk about your product, your solution, of course. So you said you focus on artists. What's the benefit? What's the solution that you offer to them compared to traditional ways of doing it today?
Yeah, so the traditional ways innovate themselves in the very specific field, but the problem is really about the management tasks that an artist or a manager on behalf of the artist needs to take on. There is the music industry and as well, due to Spotify, etc., everything has opened up a bit, and you can decide more freely. In the past, you had maybe you released with a record label and you were with them a longer time, but this now changed. So you eventually have a song with a Dutch EDM label. You are doing maybe some production for Sony Music. Then you have an own catalog, and this also, this always results in multiple pay sources. And your as artist or manager, your highest worry is, are we actually getting paid? What is owed? And this is where we help, because what they should do is they need to open data and read the data and verify in a very complex structure of you have this one stream, but this one stream has actually 6 rights. and those 6 rights are eventually paid by 6 different parties. So you should verify this one stream and then cross-check with all 6 that all 6 rights are actually collected for that specific thing. Maybe it's less, maybe it's 3 or 6, but it depends on the right setting.
Right, but it can be very complex.
Yeah, so you need to look at the data, analyze it, and then actually come to the conclusion that this is right. And if you find out that something is not right, you should then also be able to perform some analytical things to then approach the partner and say, okay, look, this is clearly missing, and this is like they can't do it. That's impossible, and it's because everything was music is dominated by tech companies and tech thinking of creating data, etc. Music is asking for, okay, share us the data, and they deliver something, but it's really a hard thing to do. So what we actually do is because they need to do the task anyway. That's what they do.
Well, it sounds like a real hassle today.
Yeah.
So you miss out on money, basically.
Yeah, it's there are estimations that it's up to $2.5 billion in the total market missing,
Wow.
so-called black box revenues. There are different approaches of different initiatives to solve that. I'm happy if they do it, but we will not. We will only help the artists to understand what is actually reported. Is it correct? Is something missing? And we do that by Helga, and we do that in a way where we actually just try to build software which we deliver to them for their use. So in a different approach, in contrast to many music companies, which sort of they position themselves in the value chain, and they say, okay, we are here and there, and but for us, it's really on the side of the artists and managers by creating software which is useful to them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I guess you also need to integrate a lot of data streams. Is that a challenge for you to get that access and to then integrate them all in your software?
Well, our approach right now is we are an extension of the management activities. So we see ourselves a little bit entitled, if you want to say, is the wrong word actually, but they give us actually a mandate to collect that data. So the data provider should technically have no choice than to deliver to us, because we are officially representing the artist. So there is a little enforcement. The challenge is actually how it's delivered. So sometimes it's emails, sometimes it's FTP servers, sometimes it's download via dashboard, etc.
Oh, wow.
So that's really challenging there for the revenue data. With usage data, it's easy as stats are available, but the revenue data is really a problem right now. So we have to define how we want to approach that. We actually created a sort of an incentive where we actually say, okay, we integrate a marketplace into Helga, where those companies can actually, promote their services. And so we sort of try to create an incentive so that they give us access, and it's then win-win, and then obviously then there's no problem for easier integration.
Right.
Once the data is here, the consolidation and transformation, etc., is very easy for us.
Yeah, but the data is the tricky part to get that in.
Yeah, but we sort of, we are not actually doing the collection of it. We are just collecting from someone that has collected already,
Sure. Yeah.
It's just really, how do we transfer it? Is it API or FTP, etc.? So we have to be very versatile there, as this typically there is no digital process, even though it's digital, but there's no process in terms of the exchange of data. Everybody's very individual. And we will still need to find out a good way there. Yeah.
What I really like about your background is that you come from that industry. You have so much specific knowledge of the industry, of the artists, etc. So I wonder, how did that help you to also find the right business model? Because the artists are sort of your clients, right?
Yeah. So there is actually business model sort of comes from the management. The management approach was always to try to define a new revenue model. And I did that with the ZHDK incubator of cultural entrepreneurship in Zurich, where they introduced me to the business model canvas. And so what we did there is actually to change the revenue model of artist management. Is typically a share you get from the artist. And the argument I had was always, okay, look, if I take a phone call now and you are not known, right? It's very cheap for you, but if you become very famous and I take 20%, my phone call I do is very, very expensive for you, right? So I try to change it, the revenue model there in terms of, let's work like attorneys. We actually track the time, send an invoice, and we can create like in good times where it's actually running quite well. We don't have too much to do. We actually create a benefit for our customers where they are actually able to then reinvest the money into projects, which is again beneficial for us. As it's sort of So same with Helga. The typical thought which comes into mind with music industry is that we need to take a share on the revenues.
Right.
But as we are positioned really, at the bottom of the value chain, it would be the wrong model. It's just not fitting there. And so the business model itself was for us, it was clear, okay, it has to be a subscription fee for the artists. We still need to account for the data volume. So there is this track fee. And with the incentive I mentioned before, we are looking to actually lead customers to them and eventually then, get a kickback from that company of a commission then, because then it makes sense again to charge a commission. But in that way, so the challenging in the business model was really, or in the revenue model there, was really then convincing like Startfeld that this is the right thing, because, they, as investors are, they look at the volume and they're like, oh, there's so many millions of dollars, right? Yeah. You should take a commission, but it's just not fitting. And our main challenge is actually to translate that into an understandable and that they understand it's really beneficent for them, that we don't do that, even though it's maybe unusual for them, right?
But I mean, the industry, right? So I think with your experience and your background, you're the right person to make that call where you say, hey, I know the industry, this doesn't make sense, we do it that way.
Yeah, and also the studies helped me there, because I studied business administration, and for me every artist is sort of a small company.
Sure.
And with that positioning, I see doesn't make sense now for management. I'm really this is really burnt into my skin right now, how I look at the artist, and it would just not make sense to have a service provider which charges so much money for nothing. It's really there is a certain service, but the service is not worth the money.
Right.
So it should be another way around. So I think you are right there. That's the call. I try to do it. If the market doesn't want to pay like that, I can't. It's actually interesting. I mentioned sometimes to artists, from management actually, if you think we are expensive, I can also do a 20% commission. It's much better for me if you feel more comfortable, right? But they do hundreds of thousands each year, right? So the 20% commission is more interesting for us, in a way. But yeah.
Is it sometimes difficult to convince them to go for a traditional SaaS subscription, because that's just not the way they are used to do business?
Yeah, we try to combine now SaaS revenue model with the traditional music industry model. So, but it depends if it's actually allowed by law, which is really challenging right now, because typically the commissions are deducted from the revenue. So the artist signs up and they get the service immediately. They don't have to pay any upfront money. Sometimes they even get an advance, for onboarding it. So what we do now there is actually to try to, SaaS is really, credit card driven. You need to put your credit card there, and we sort of want to try to avoid that, but still make them pay for it. And as we not only have the revenue data, but also have the revenue actually running through us, we are actually able to implement, there are a bunch of companies in the US, etc., that do that, actually a service fee, which is implemented by the time the money runs through it.
Okay.
So it's a deduction. Also banks do that, I think.
Nice.
Right. So this is what we aim for. So this is more traditional. They don't have to put their credit card down, but we still can sort of enforce our revenue model there. and so that should actually then work. And then I think the convincing is easier as there is no credit card.
True.
Even if it would be better, for independence, etc. But yeah.
Let's talk about the other challenge. Of course, not only the business model can be a challenge by itself, but also acquiring users, winning new clients. How do you go about that today?
So we have our user group right now is very, very closed. We only have a bunch of artists that use the service already because there is no user interface they can access, and most of the guys want to log in and see something. So our strategy right now for the acquisition is actually that we focus on managers first, which have a large catalog of songs and multiple artists. So we aim to onboard them first, and it's also easier for us to convince them as they are business-ish anyway, right? So we can actually give arguments that make sense to them. So this is our first group there. We collected managers so far and contacts and already teased the idea. Right now we're doing a first test with an onboarding test of the manager thing with an artist which has released on almost every record label you can find, which is successful, especially in deep house space, etc. It's a singer. So we look at him right now with the manager together, and if we see if that works well, the onboarding procedure and everything is fine and clear, we then have access to the full catalog of that manager, which features very, very interesting artists for us, which are interesting data-wise, but also
brand-wise. Are you allowed to share any names?
It's actually a challenging situation for us as well. Yeah. Typically in the music industry, you put on like a poster, we work with those artists.
Yeah, right.
And our thought is actually, okay, we shouldn't do that because, as we are working with money and we have the data of the money linked to the payments, it could be potentially a security issue.
Right.
So we try right now to enforce that thought. Okay, if they don't know who's with us, we are unlikely in attack. So IT security wise, that's maybe Fedor's side, but so we try to keep it low profile as possible. Yeah.
It's like the Swiss bank of the heart of the music industry to a certain degree. Yeah. Is it sometimes also difficult to build the trust, because this is the very core of the business of an agent, right? And also the musician, because payments, of course, they want to get paid. Is that sometimes difficult to build the trust there, that they say, hey, we let you check that and run that for us?
Well, yeah, maybe. It's maybe if they are very early in their career journey, it's harder for us to convince them because, why should we not be paid? Because some companies that have problems with really collecting the money that is owed are maybe hundreds of years old. Yeah. Why should they have a problem? They have 300, 400 employees, and now you are here telling me, they are doing their job not correct, right? Yeah. So, but as soon as something happens, they are very, they listen and then
they feel the pain point, and then they know they need a solution.
So and this happens anyway. So maybe right now we have sort of the benefit that it's very unclear how black boxes are solved. There are aims with blockchain or whatever. There's a huge investment in Switzerland that went into a music company that aimed to solve that via providing a system, but also again in only one write, and it doesn't solve the problem that we aim to solve. But if they find it out, then payments are better, and it's likely, then we maybe have to change our business model. But it's unlikely that the change will be fundamentally so fast that it's then not justified anymore to use the service.
There's certainly a lot moving in the industry at the moment.
Yeah.
One thing I also want to focus or talk about is your internal setup. You are still active with your own company, the Neidhardt & Company, the management company, basically, of artists. How do you manage the time between Helga and your own management company? Because I see the advantages, right? You can stay lean with Helga, you can extend the runway, but at the same time, it's maybe also a distraction or maybe even an advantage. You tell me.
So we are the Neidhardt and Company consists out of me and an accountant, right? So this is
very efficient.
So that's very simple. But as Startfeld, for example, they told me management is not scalable. If you follow that line, it's true, and there is no intention of signing new artists. I rather fade out the management and stay with a bunch of clients I really like, and do more of a management consult-ish activity than extending it. So in the past year, this year. In the past months of this year, this is the right wording, I constantly reduced the activity of Neidhardt and Company and added it to Helga. Mm-hmm. As Helga is somehow actually a spin-off of Neidhardt and Company, it's justified to actually do that move. Yeah. So right now, as said, we try to reduce as much as possible, as Helga is intensive in terms of what needs to be done right now.
Sure.
So
it's sort of a fading out period.
Yeah, which is fine. In terms of I did now management for 6 years with clients. Universal, for example, calculates 3 to 4 years of a lifetime with an artist, product lifetime.
Wow. That's short.
Yeah, that's very short.
Wow.
So in their roster, right? And I look at it right now. I'm happy that the guys we were able to help are, they can, when we, detach ourselves, they have own companies. They're fully set up, and my job is done there in terms of managing them. I think then that's fine, even if there may be other ideas. I should be a star or whatever, but it's they are fine. They can make money. They can invest, etc.
Right.
So for us, it's also the good time. We had talent development contracts with most of the artists. So our job is really done there. So
sure.
Why should we extend then if there's the opportunity to actually pivot to Helga, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing, you're currently also open to fundraise. You're raising a round of 600K, and you collaborate with Daura. Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to tokenize your shares and go down that path versus the traditional, capital increase with business angels or VC investors?
Mm-hmm. So with tokenizing the shares, I actually didn't understand what's the benefit of it initially, but I liked the sound of it. So in Liechtenstein, there's there are tokenized assets, etc. There's the talk all the time. Mm-hmm. So with tokenizing the shares, that wasn't really the main decision. The main decision was really about we participated in an investors forum, and there were some angels approaching. And then there was like the email correspondence, etc. And I felt like I really don't want to do that. This is like I feel uncomfortable, and I lack the process. How should I approach it? What do I share, etc. So with Daura, it somehow I envisioned the process really lean there and very clear. And it actually has proven to be right, for us. By the time we started working with Daura, we immediately did a huge learning curve in actually doing things we have not even had ready by the time, by defining term sheet, shareholders agreement with co-founder, shareholder agreement with crowd equity participants, shareholder agreement with private investors, cap table, valuation, etc. So this was all done very, very fast, and so the main decision was actually benefiting from that process to become ready to actually then tokenize the shares. Right now, I see the benefit of tokenized shares with the way they develop and connect with banks, and actually allow shareholders to eventually manage the shares within their bank portfolio, which is interesting. Sell it easier or transfer it easier. So that's and for us it's very easy to have the whole shareholders book on digitally with and everything is done digitally. So that's very, very good for us, and was actually right now I feel comfortable again texting the guys I met at the investors forum and telling them, look, we do that now with Daura if you're interested. So yeah.
Is it easy to convince them to move over to the tokenized shares compared to their traditional model of owning the shares directly themselves?
Well, the good thing is there's no enforcement. They can if they want to use it, they can use it. especially folks in my social surroundings, they are actually interested in signing up to Daura and then do it. With investors in a more like professional investors or government investments, etc. It's maybe harder to convince them. Okay, you need to sign up, etc. But Daura there really allows us to do it both ways. Yeah. By the end of it, if the share is tokenized, why shouldn't it be beneficial for them? I can print it and give it to them. If they want to.
Right.
So I mean, it's new. I think Daura only has there aren't too many companies actually to be tokenized right now. So I think we're very early there. But I'm very convinced that due to the backing as well of Daura, that this will be it. In terms of why not?
Sure.
Makes a lot of sense.
And now we are recording this podcast mid-October 2022. The markets are in quite a volatile situation. Everything is losing, lower multiples. Do you also feel that as a startup, that it's more difficult to convince investors and to raise money in these times? Or is there not a big effect that you feel as a startup company?
I hear and read that everywhere, that VC funds, VC funding is going down, has been propelling down earlier this year in the US first. Now Europe is following up. But I actually don't know. If I would have needed a similar situation before that I can compare it.
Fair point. Yeah.
Right now I'm like, yeah, maybe.
But I mean, investors are talking to you. You get interest. You have people who want to invest. So from that regard, it's progressing.
Yeah, that's I don't really feel it. So I don't care if it's who is it, right? Maybe there are VCs that are now more hesitant, but sure. I actually we had two VCs calls which were sort of guiding us in a way, and so I actually care more about the people that are in the VC than the VC itself, because I think money is you can finance in so many ways. Even if we need to bootstrap a little longer, but can then refinance with revenues, that's also fine. It's sure. Not the killer criteria right now to find that specific investor, for us.
You keep all options open.
Yeah, which is very, very healthy, I think, for us.
Absolutely. You are raising 600,000 Swiss francs. What will the money be used for in the future? What have you planned?
We are actually raising close to 2 million.
Oh, this is just the Daura part.
Right, we have 30% allocated to a public raising. I don't even know the English word right now, but to the public 30% of the financing round, around 30%, to make it available to everyone that actually wants to try and do a VC investment. Sort of angelish, and they don't need to invest too much money. So it's a very they can buy as many shares as they want. For us, it's good anyway. We're happy with everything that's collected. And the rest is then going towards VCs and angels. What we want to use it for is actually we're now launching our UI by the end of the year, and we now have our first sales and business development resource that we're just building up, doing the first contacts, test calls, and with the support of our network. And we want to be ready then, earlier next year with ideally closed financial round. Funds in the account, and then be able to actually focus on large extent, like a quarter of the funds are used for sales and marketing to really do that. And then, as we are very early in the product, we want to add functions very, very early, as we have, I think, the highest feedback we have right now, and so we should be able to actually implement them quickly. Otherwise, we will lose the feedback loops. They're right. Like, okay, now it's 2 years later and they still ask me for feedback. It's so we want to be a bit faster and expand our resources. So that's the main purpose there.
The days will certainly not get shorter for you in any way.
Yeah, I doubt it.
So to wrap up today's conversation, Vincenzo, we have some rapid fire questions for you. I either give you different options to choose from or a short question, and you have to answer in one sentence. You ready?
Yep.
First one, musician or entrepreneur?
Musicians are sometimes entrepreneurs, but I would prefer to be an entrepreneur.
With a passion for music in the free time. What's your favorite music genre?
I don't have any. It's either actually that's wrong, but mostly EDM, some rock, some rap, some pop. So it's broad. So I think I am in line with most people right now.
The whole spectrum. Yeah. That's great. Do the Swiss take too long to launch from your perspective?
I don't think it's their fault to not be so fast. It's rather about being in Switzerland. You need to move a little bit further to then actually also get a speed. Yeah.
What was the last business idea that you came up with? I know you are in a very creative field, and of course you have Helga, but I'm sure you also came up with other business ideas or businesses that you could start.
The funny idea or funky idea, I would say, is I was wondering myself, isn't it possible that AI can write my business plan?
Nice. Yeah. And the last one for you, you live in St. Gallen, you study in Zurich, so St. Gallen or Zurich?
Both.
I can't accept that. You have to make a choice.
It's hard. I mean, I can't. It's okay. Both really, really nice. So, but my choice obviously right now for business development, etc., is St. Gallen. But my heart is in Zurich always a little bit.
Perfect. Vincenzo, thank you so much for stopping by. Lots of success with the planned financing round and all the best for Helga and your future.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.